What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 11 of BlueTruth New York Rangers Talk with myself, Brian Attard. Powered by the Sports Box. Got a lot to talk about tonight. We are just days away from the first preseason game, and there's a lot going on in Rangerland. Apparently, being told Ben Simmons stinks for some reason. Thank you, Anthony Morella. Your Flyers are also terrible. So match your basketball team. So much to talk about tonight. We haven't been on in close to a month. I was going to do a show last week, but the Giants were on Thursday night, and I am not a Giants fan, but I wanted to respect those who are, that wanted to watch the game. They probably, the way that game turned out, wish that they didn't, unfortunately, for them. But news of the day, we've hit 500 followers on the BlueTruth Facebook page. You guys are awesome. Thank you very much for that. If you haven't already, give me a like, give me a follow on the Facebook page. We're on Twitter. We're on YouTube. I'm probably going to do an Instagram at some point. But I can't thank you guys enough. This is 11 episodes in. Been doing it since roughly July, and we've already hit 500. And I know how hard that is. So thank you, everyone. Flyers fans mutually excluded from this show. Yeah, you can watch and learn something, but, your team stinks. Guys, listen. There is so much to talk about tonight. The puck has dropped. As I mentioned, training camp has begun for the Rangers. The first preseason game is against those stinking Islanders, Sunday night, 7 p.m. at Madison Square Garden. But before we get to that news, the news of the day came from Vince Mercogliano of USA Today, speculating on his podcast, New Ice City, that the Mika Zibanejad contract is going to come in between 7 and 8 years, between $8 and $9 million, with the distinct possibility and the chance that it may come in slightly over that. And that should concern you tremendously. Excuse me, I was drinking water. Sorry for the burp there. This is not good. Okay. We've been talking on this show all summer long about the Rangers' biggest decision as a franchise was what they were going to do at center. Signing Zibanejad, not signing Zibanejad. And, again, if you're talking $9 million a year for potentially 8 years, you're talking about ages 28 through 36. And as good as he might be in the front end of that deal, the back half's going to be a problem. We talked about the cautionary tale of the Maple Leafs and how their money was locked up in Tavares and Marner and Matthews and Nylander. And yes, these are phenomenal players, and you do not want to get rid of them. But when you have so much money locked up in them, it hinders your ability to do anything else. So, again, we've kind of all thought this might be where the dollars end up, and the term. So I'm not surprised at it. My concern is that now there's a legitimate source saying that this is the direction that they're going. And they're already in conversations. Zibanejad today in media day or yesterday, whenever it was, said, I let my agent handle that. I mean, it looks like it's headed that direction. So again, it's pricey, and it's hard for me to say we haven't already seen peak Mika Zibanejad. So you're going to be paying for years which are probably not as good as the years that you've seen. Usually not in your best interest. So, but again, we said he has them by the balls if they don't make a deal at center. We'll talk about the other guy in Buffalo towards the end of the show and where that's going. But, he knows he owns them because they have nothing in depth. They have nothing at center depth. And again, pricey. Alex says, has Reeves beat up Wilson yet? It's coming. Opening night. Too much, too long. Throw in a no movement clause and we're all set. Alec, I got to tell you, that deal might be its own no movement clause. Do you even need one after that? If you're going to give that guy 8 years, at what point does another team say, so we're not taking that deal on? You need to bribe us to do so. It just doesn't. It becomes duplicative adding a no movement clause to a deal like that. Connor Nicolene, hopefully this happens before the end of the year. If it happens at all, it's still risky. No, I think this could happen sooner than later. I think this could happen. They haven't named the captain yet. Could that be something that they're waiting for, pen to paper, let the ink dry, put the C on them because he's going to be here for then 8 years. I'm sorry, 8 or 7 or 8 years. That's extremely possible. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of balls in the air, but it seems like they've decided that they're going to give this player a long-term contract. And that should make you nervous. You got money locked up in Jacob Trouba for better or for worse. You have money locked up now in Panarin, which is fine. Kreider's deal, it's not like 8-9 million, but 6.5 is no joke. You would add this deal on top. Adam Fox will need a deal next year. You will get to the point where Capo Caco needs a deal, and Alexi Lafreniere needs a deal, and Keandre Miller needs a deal, and it's going to be harder and harder to keep all these kids together. And everybody says, the cap goes up. Yeah, it does, but then players want a higher percentage of the increased cap. So if the cap was 80 million and you wanted 10%, that was 8. If it goes to 90, now it's 9. Players don't tend to, it's not about dollar amounts so much. It's about percentage of cap, which is why when the cap stops going up, the percentage of cap flattens out, and that's where you get hurt. Because again, players know that. They assume there's an increase, bottom left to top right in the salary cap. Hey, global pandemic. Hey, nobody knew that was going to happen, right? So it is what it is. But when you're talking about putting that kind of dollar amount to this player, he better be the number one center. And we talk about this all the time. And I had Jim Schmiedeberg on a couple of weeks ago, and we talking about, is Mika Zibanejad a number one center? And well, he is on this team. Does that mean he's a number one center somewhere else? They've decided he's going to be their number one center. So for better or for worse, we better get used to it. And here's hoping it's 8 million. I mean, 8 million with the captaincy, take it. If it's 9, I think bigger problems are coming there. Robert Scatini, welcome back, sir. There's going to be a risk at the end of the contract, but he's one hell of a player. It's hard to be upset. No, he is a hell of a player, but the question is going to be, how long is he going to be a hell of a player? And in those last 4 years, when he's 33 and 34 and 35 and 36, and you have $8 or $9 million locked up in him, what does that prevent you from doing? Because you start looking at this roster, you start looking at the kids coming up. They're going to need deals, and it's hard to project out that you're going to be able to keep them all. The more I think about it, the more I think Keandre Miller may not be long for this team, where he may get a bridge deal, but when that's done, they move on. Again, defense is the strength of the system. So you got to be aware of that piece of it. Who knows? But again, when you're locking up a finite asset, which is cap space long term, you got to be concerned about that. And in the comments that I saw, in all the Ranger groups that I'm out spreading the good word of BlueTruth in, there was some hesitation there. A lot of apprehension about, hey, this is a long time. And everybody keeps saying, give him 5 years, give him 5 years. I mean, come on. Of course you want to give him less years for less money. That's what you should do because you have a finite resource. But then he's not going to take it. Why would he? And what would you do in that scenario? So does this mean you're buying puts? No. I'll sell puts on this one. I'll collect premium because you're not going to sell them because you're not going to put it to me later. Alec, we'll need the money for Pete, Kakko, Laugh, Igor, Kravtsov, Fox, Lundqvist. The list goes on and on. They've done a phenomenal job putting the kids together, so you're 110% right there. A fading, broken Mika absorbing 7 to 10% of the cap when they'll need to be paid and kept together is not wise cap management. It is not. Kevin's point here, the graph doesn't match players' expectations of what they think they're worth. Kevin, it's not just that, though, right? Because then you see Seth Jones signing for $9 million a year. It's other GMs. The top tier will always get paid, right? The top tier player will always get the money because of the talent and what they bring. It's then when those mid to upper level guys, more like mid, they start to get the money as well because now they're finite. That's what raises all boats in a bad way. Because now, if I'm Adam Fox and Seth Jones, who can't play offense, barely skate, I like the plug guy. I don't want the player doesn't stink by any stretch, but he's not worth $9 million. And he gets $9 million. Well, Adam Fox must be worth 15 or something. I mean, it's just not even close. He's not going to get 15. But the point is, raises the market. Kind of $1 million with this hard cap makes a big difference. Absolutely does. It absolutely does. But again, it's supposed to go up $1 million for 2023 and then or 22, 23. We'll see what that looks like. Savior, Zib's good, injury prone, tough choice to say trade for Eichel. Price is cheap. We will get to that at the end of the show. Lou Guerrero, long contracts always seem to come back and bite you at his age. If Zib was 25, okay. Yeah. And that goes to the Eichel argument. We'll talk about it. James, my brother, how are you? Mika's a stud. Convo home's getting old. He's irreplaceable. Well, he's not irreplaceable. Peak Zibanejad might be, but how long are you going to have this one? Now, we will get to this, Kevin. I assure you of that. Of course, he failed the physical. He never had the surgery. So what do you expect? I mean, I saw that comment too earlier today. But anyway, neither here nor there. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. We'll be breaking it down on this show. You know that. News and notes out of training camp. The biggest thing that I thought was interesting out of camp today was that your boy Alexis Lafreniere was playing the right wing on the top line with Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider. Huh. Okay. Well, it kind of makes a lot more sense now looking at that, why they let Buchnevich go for peanuts, because there was no spot for him here. If they had the inclination, which we thought and we said, they're probably not going to be happy having a $6.5 million third line left wing. So they had to find a way around that. And I guess Kreider and Panarin pulled rank and said, we'll stay on the left. Lafreniere was willing to go play on the right. Gallant said he'd play defense if I asked him to. That's how these kids are. So that changes the dynamic, because now you're keeping all these guys in the top six. And I guess the opposite of beneficiary, I guess, the loser here would be Vitaly Kravtsov, who would slot down to your third line if Kakko's at 2. We're going to go into some preliminary early-ish line combinations as we go through the show here. But that was, I think, the most interesting thing out of day one was that this puck just dropped and they're already trying Lafreniere on the top line on his off wing. So that's interesting to me. Again, that opens up a lot of doors. We always said, hey, your left wings are so deep, you can't play them all. You can't bring anybody up. Well, if one goes over to the right, that opens up some spots. So that's interesting. In interview, Gerard Gallant said if he was a betting man, he would say the team will have a captain. So we'll talk more about that next week as we kind of get some clarity as to who that might be. Over the summer, we had speculated that it would be Jacob Trouba. That's obviously still on the table, so we'll see where that goes. Wouldn't surprise me if that's the direction that they go. But it seems like they're prepared to go into the season for the first time in, I think, 2 or 3 years with a name, actually, since McDonough left, right? So with a captain. Media day, Mika said, quote, "We have to make the playoffs." I'm not going to get into season predictions tonight. We have all the time. The season doesn't start for a couple of weeks. We have time for that. But I think it's interesting that Mika takes that standpoint. Obviously, if you interact with me on social media, I'm a big, if you're not going to win, lose guy. I'm a big, tank for high picks. At least you get something for it. I'm also extremely cognizant of the fact that players don't think that way. And why would they? They're there for themselves and their careers, not so much in regards to what's necessarily best for the future of the franchise, how the guy come in and take their job. I don't disagree with them. There was this question about, is there a mandate? Is there, decrees from up high? And that's why Jeff Gordon is no longer here and John Davidson's no longer here. And to a lesser extent, David Quinn is no longer here because ownership wanted this to move a lot more quickly. So yes, I'm glad that they're thinking about it. I'll put it to you that way. That may have some impact to their deadline approach, which maybe, hey, if they thought they were going to be contending for a spot, the last thing that they'd really want to do is ship off Buchnevich for futures at that point. Optics would look pretty bad on that end. Again, it all kind of keys in together as to why Buchnevich doesn't even start in the year with the team. He's out in St. Louis, signed a $5.8 million deal. Earlier, a couple of weeks ago, Drury was quoted as saying that the team views Philip Hedl and young Morgan Barron as centers. That's important. That's important because we've said all summer long their depth at center is weak. It's Zibanejad, Strome, Hedl, Kevin Rooney / Morgan Barron. We'll talk about some of the prospective line combinations, but there's been talk about, could Philip Hedl play the wing? Is his future maybe on the wing? What's that mean for a guy like Kravtsov? If that is the case, I think it's good that the team is saying this is where we view these players as centers. So, 12 months from now, going into next season, depending who's here, if Ryan Strome is not, you can pretty much just plop Philip Hedl in your two center spot, which is kind of what they wanted him to be longer term. Still a young player, still could get there. And I like a lot of Morgan Barron. PJ Gregoretti, welcome to the show, sir. New name. Appreciate that. Like the show. Long contracts go into players late 30s almost never work. Hope Eichel goes somewhere else. We're going to talk about Eichel at the end of the show. You have my word on that because I have some thoughts. James Trouba, captain, then shipped to Tampa. That'd be fine. Henry, how do the Rangers cap space rank in the lowest ones before the season begins? They do have some cap space. We will get to that towards the end of the show. There is some linkage to some other topics. I don't want to jump the gun. Bob, welcome back. Appreciate that. Given the opportunity, Barron could be an impact center on this roster. We're going to talk about training camp battles and really how many there are and how many there should be. And Barron is absolutely one of the guys that is probably going to be very entrenched in one of them. Henry, you actually asked me a question about they have $9.3 million in cap space. It's interesting. What could they want to do with $9.3 million in cap space this year that you can't take into next year, kids? It ain't like football where you can drop it into next year. So that's a subplot because they've left themselves the opening to do a couple of different things. It will be interesting for sure. End of the show, we'll talk about that $9.3 million in cap space. Kind of surprised about the lack of PTOs and training camps. Someone like a Tyler Bozak could help this team. Hold that thought, Connor, because we're going to get, like I said, into line combinations, and that's why I'm going to disagree with you on that, because I think there's really not as much opportunity here as maybe Gerard Gallant would like the kids to think there is. Parker, how about giving the seat to Zibanejad? A's go to Trouba, Strome, Kreider, and Panarin? Well, again, we talked about Mika Zibanejad prospective contract. Is the C maybe a part of that? Do you sign longer term? We'll put the C on you. Is that a bargaining chip? I said coming into last season, hey, why wouldn't they name Zibanejad the captain? We all thought, we as a base, not us in this show, but just generally Rangers fans, that Mika was the de facto captain. Well, why wouldn't they put the C on him? Well, you're going into a contract negotiation for a long time and a lot of money. You don't necessarily want to give the all the power and the leverage to the player. And you're talking about an original 6 team that had just traded 2 captains, as we know, Ryan Callahan and Ryan McDonough. So they didn't really want to, again, give him the leverage of having the C on top of the fact. So I understand that. Could it end up that way? Yeah. Mika signs a long-term deal, opens opening night with the C on his chest. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Robert, wouldn't it be fantastic if Hedl took that next step, became the second-line center we need if Barron ran up the top 9? Yep. Yeah, it would. And you are right, sir. Yeah, it would. And this is a big year for Filip Hedl's development. We're going to talk about in the line combinations why that is, because I think he's going to be given some talent to work with. And I think Bob knows. I think Bob knows where my head's at with the 9.3. So, guys, listen. From 2017 to 2020, the Rangers made 7 first-round picks. 5 of them might be on the roster opening night. Filip Hedl would be one, 2017. 2018 had 3 picks. Vitaly Kravtsov, the defenseman K-Andre Miller, and a new face this year, Nils Lundqvist, all from the 2018 draft. 3 number 1 picks that year. And, of course, 2019, second overall, Kaapo Kakko. Last but certainly not least, Alexis Lafreniere, the number 1 pick in the 2020 draft. So it really should make you happy to have 5 of the 7 first-round picks you made in a 4 draft period. One was Lias Anderson. No, goodbye, get out of here, you bum. Will Cool looks pretty good, who they got for that pick. And the other's Braden Schneider, who might be a year away. We'll see what the defense looks like. But the point is, this is what rebuilding is. Teams go into drafts hoping that their first-round pick can pan out. And by all, the Rangers are going to bring all 3 first-round picks to the NHL. And when you think back to the years and the years of guys who just never came close, you have to feel good about what this rebuild has done and in the time frame it has taken. I feel phenomenal about it. Again, I said before the show, I'm a big guy on if you're not going to win, lose, stockpile the picks, sell off, get your rebuild going. I don't remember any of those losses the last couple of years. You're picking 2, you're picking 1. Yeah, ping pong balls make great general managers. No question about that. Sorry, Jeff. But you got to be excited about where the team is headed. Parker, I could see Kakko, Lafreniere as line mates. They played well together. Yes, potentially more on the power play, though. If Lafreniere is playing right side, now they're both on the right side. So, youth on one side, veteran on the other. Michael Faris, love the show. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Would love a like or a follow on our Facebook page. Just hit 500. Feel good about that. Looking forward to see what Barron can bring to the table. We're going to talk a lot about Morgan Barron here in just a little bit, and I am in full agreement with you. That's a piece I think not enough people are talking about this team. So, remember the letter. This is the result of the letter, and things are looking just peachy in New York, and that makes me very happy from here to here. Roster battles. Now, it's kind of a misnomer because we were talking all off season about, and this was when Buchnevich was here, barring a deal that the top 9 was essentially set, that you were going to have some mixture. And again, this was off season time, guys, right? So what we talked about, you had Kreider, Lafreniere, and Panarin on the left. You had Zibanejad, Strome, and an open spot, maybe Hedl in the center. And then you had Buchnevich, Kravtsov, and Kakko on the right. So there really wasn't a lot of open spots in the top 9. Buchnevich is now gone. Wasn't exactly, a replacement was not brought in. But you talk about how many roster battles are there and how many there should be. And I don't think there's that many. Like if you look at the roster right now, so here's your roster locks, in my opinion, and I for the most part would think you would agree. Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider, Kakko, Lafreniere, Strome, Hedel, Goodrow, Kravtsov, Reeves. That's 10 spots out of 12 in your forward group. Defensively, the 4 that were here last year, Adam Fox, the Norris Trophy winner, who had a really cool looking jersey today in training camp, little Norris on the back. Ryan Lindgren, Jacob Trouba, you're contractually obligated to. Keandre Miller, second year, and you signed Patrick Nemeth to a 3-year deal. So, well, I've just named for you 10 forwards and 5 defensemen. I'm not talking about goaltenders right now. Screw that. What's left? Well, what's left is a 4th line left wing, a 4th line center, and a 3rd pair right defense. Gallant can talk all he wants to about training camp battles. Excuse me. Stay hydrated. I talk a lot. I'm talking about myself for an hour. When you go and get Ryan Reeves and you pay him an extension on top of the deal that he has, he's got a roster spot. You know, James brings up the point, he playing half the season. Yeah, that just means your spare forward comes in for him. But he's on the roster. He's got a spot on opening night. When you give Barclay Goodrow a 6-year deal, am I to believe that he's not going to play, that he has to fight for a spot? It's a joke. Like you can say whatever you want to. These are quote unquote made men. They have their roster spots. And Parker, I'm going to get to Fox in just a second. Well, the answer is obviously Ryan Lindgren, but I'll tell you why in a sec. Even the battles aren't really battles, in my opinion. Because when you talk about that 3rd pair right defense, that's going to be Nils Lundqvist. You know, Gallant said, we're not really sure, the defense wants to play opposite spots, this, that, and a third. I mean, look, they've been talking about Lundqvist all summer long and before that. Everybody's hyped up on him. Social media's hyped up on him. So it would be like a shock to me if it wasn't Nils Lundqvist. That's his spot to lose. Like they signed a guy like Patrick Nemeth specifically to play with a guy like Nils Lundqvist. So if he doesn't earn the spot out of camp, I think that's a problem. I think it's absolutely his to lose. Parker, thank you for the like on the show. I appreciate that. Feel free to likes and hearts. We love them. Break the Facebook algorithm. The more likes you put on, the more people will see my smiling face. 4th line left wing. It's going to be Sammy Blais. Because regardless of, we can sit here and talk about that they didn't get enough for Buchnevich, and I'm not at all going to disagree with you. I said on this show all summer long, I have no issue trading Pavel Buchnevich, and you can see why. I have a lot of issue with the return that you got back. And if that's the return, if that's what the market return was for Sammy Blais, I mean, for Pavel Buchnevich, Sammy Blais, and a 2nd round pick, then maybe we overrate our own players, which I know that we do. My stupid watch is going off. I can't assume that Drury took a subpar deal. I'm sure he shopped him around, and that was the best he could do. So I don't see a scenario where the guy that you got for your top line wing from a year ago isn't going to make the team. Sammy Blais, I think, has got that 4th line left wing spot locked down. So then the question really, the only question to me is that 4th line center spot. It's the only question mark. It's either going to be Kevin Rooney, who had the role last year, or Morgan Barron. And you're going to say, well, Brian, they protected Kevin Rooney in the expansion draft. They let Colin Blackwell had a nice year go. I think it's going to be Kevin Rooney and not Morgan Barron. And I'm not going to necessarily disagree with you, but what I will say to that is Rooney played a more valuable position, center. Obviously, Blackwell didn't do that. And I think that they give themselves options. Teams love options. So they didn't want to be left out in the cold if Morgan Barron didn't step up and earn that fourth line center role. I forget who the comment was. I know a couple comments came in regards to Morgan Barron. Michael actually said, looking forward to see what he can bring to the table. I agree. And I think what he's going to bring to the table is he's going to be, I think, a very good option at fourth line center, bigger type player, plays that heavier game. He even says that in all of his quotes, like, I can do what they want me to do. That's probably, you can guys tell me if I'm wrong. I love your comments, love interacting with you guys. If you think that there's some other battles that I'm just not seeing, at least in the forward group, because that top nine is the top nine. I don't get Buchnevich. Okay, Buchnevich out, Goodrow in. That's your top nine, barring a trade. So you can talk about all you want to about, maybe Will Cooley can earn a spot. Probably not. Maybe Lauri Paguniemi can earn a spot. Probably not, because there's just not spots, because you went out this offseason, added the grit that you say you need. Not going to go into that tonight, but you added that. So now that takes up roster spots. Kind of start Morgan Barron, Hartford, bring him up later. He's got some juice to him, though. I think they want to give him the spot. That's the roster lineup will juggle, Robert. I agree. Mike Epstein, welcome back, brother. Top nine's locked, like you said. I agree. I don't think there's no room. Is that a good thing? I think there's pros and cons to it. The pros are that you have continuity and you have the same guys and you know what you're doing. But the bad part about that is a lot of those guys are locked due to their contracts. You can't, look, I'm happy to have Barclay Goodrow. I'm happy to pay him when he's getting paid. But that's not a guy who's going to end up somewhere on the fourth line necessarily. Could it possibly? Yeah, but not likely. I think he's a third line guy. But these guys are locked in because of their contracts. Like, no matter what. Will Cooley could score 4 goals a game in preseason. He's got nowhere to go. You have to then physically move someone to open up a spot, which they're probably not going to do. So that's where I'm at there. So let's talk about those forwards and an early look at possible line combinations. So first line, the way it's looking, and again, this may change a full 360 by the time we can reconvene next week. Kreider, Zibanejad, Lafreniere. So the problem of having a $6.5 million third line left wing goes out the door because Chris Kreider stays with Mika on the top line. Lafreniere played very well with Zibanejad the last 9-10 games of last year. And the fact that he's already opened up camp at that spot makes me think that that's kind of where they want him to be. They want to bring up as much of the talent into the top 9, into the top 6 as they can. And they accomplish that by moving one of those big left wings to the right side. So Lafreniere on the top line, which again, I can't wait to see him this year. I'm so fired up to see Lafreniere in year 2. So fired up to see Lafreniere in a real goddamn season, by the way, like an 82 gamer where you're going to road games. You're not just stuck in your division. We're finally, I think, the world seems like we're coming out on the other side of this. It is as much of one piece as we can be. I just cannot wait to go back to the Garden. I haven't been there since March of 2020 before the pandemic hit. So I cannot wait I don't think I've gone 18 months without going to a Rangers game since I was 14. So definitely 16, because then I would take the train to my father's chagrin with my buddy Scott, and we would just go because we were stupid kids. I live in South Jersey, so it is a trek for me to go to the Garden. I don't care. I love going. There's nothing like being in that building for me. It is an adrenaline that I can't even begin to explain to you. And I'm going through massive withdrawal symptoms, and I'm cannot wait to go back. That's line 1. I think if you look at it from the standpoint of you're playing pairs, you're playing Mika with Kreider, who played well together, adding Lafreniere, that mix is good. Not a lot of question marks then about line 2. You keep Ryan Strome with Artemi Panarin, who is the only reason, by the way, that Ryan Strome's, the way that he is because of Artemi Panarin. Chris Reistetter, Laffy on the off wing could be interesting. I like the left-hand shot on the right. And to your point, Chris, that's exactly what Gallant said, is that, a lot of skilled guys like playing their off wing. So is a skilled guy. I mean, is Lafreniere the second most skilled guy in the team, maybe behind Panarin? I think maybe a little more than Zibanejad, frankly. Michael Faris, Alexi, with a true training camp gives me excitement. 100%, man. We don't realize, and this is why last year, even when there were all the people talking about, Lafreniere is a bust, hasn't scored a goal, you people don't realize what that was like. Because you didn't have a full year. Lafreniere came up in the middle of the worst year any of us are all going to live in. There was no actual preseason, no true training camp, and he had to figure it out on the fly. Kaapo Kakko has not yet played a full season in the NHL. 2 years ago was cut short, and last year was a short season. So, Mike, your point's dead on. Dead on. And that's where I'm excited for a lot of these kids. We talk about having five first-round picks over 4 years in your opening night roster. That's exciting. 3 years. What am I talking about? Oh, there's 6. I'm counting Heedle. So Heedle, 6 first-round picks. I thought it was 5. I can't add. I'm only in finance. I can't even add. My Red Bull wore off. Anyway, Kevin, 13 off wing could be the best kept secret in the NHL. Man, I do hope so. This line, I think, is the easiest one to project, especially if line 1 ends up the way that it does. There was some talk last year that Panarin requested Blackwell in place of Kakko. Look, Kakko looks thick. Kakko's put some muscle on this offseason. You want to talk about a breakout player? Get him in a full year, playing with actual talent. You got to remember, 2 years ago, he was playing on the fourth line with trash. And everybody always wanted to, Kakko's had the worst season of anybody. Well, what the hell do you expect? He's on the fourth line. Thanks, David Quinn. Idiot. Put him on that line. Have him be the muscle with Stroman Panarin. He could flourish. Could absolutely flourish the way we all thought he could when he was drafted. Parker, good point about Kakko. Needs more ice time. Absolutely. We keep talking about, they lost Buchnevich for nothing, but we kept saying they have to put these guys in the top 6, at the very least the top 9. Good players, when they play with good players, play well. So, of course, Kakko had a horrific rookie season playing on the fourth line with garbage, who's not even here anymore. Even last year, he didn't really have his defensive game significantly improved last year. I'm expecting big things from Kakko this year. Lou Guerrero, that was Doofus Quinn. Yeah, I'm not mad at all that he's gone. I think, and I said this too, I didn't even necessarily think that getting rid of Gorton and JD had anything to do with Quinn going. Quinn might have been gone anyway. So I wasn't really, I was fine one way or another there. Chris Reiser, let the kids play. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mike Faris, Kakko much more adapted, should flourish. I agree. Like I said, he looks good. He just looks like he filled out. And remember, these are kids. We forget, it's not the NFL where these are 22, 23-year-old college kids coming out. These are 18, 19-year-olds, especially in Kakko's case, making his first trip to North America, changing everything about his life. So that's my take on line 2 as we currently stand. So that leaves the third line. So, as I said, I don't think that they paid Barclay Goodrow a 6-year deal to play on the fourth line. I don't think so. So I think at the very least, he's starting out in that third line wing spot that was opened up by Kreider going to 1 and Lafreniere going to right. That's Barclay Goodrow's spot. Playing with kids, Philip Heedle and Vitaly Kravtsov. That's not a small line. Kravtsov's got size. People forget how that Kravtsov's got size and some physicality to his game. Being that, again, Drury said, hey, we see these guys as centers, referring to Heedle and Morgan Barron. I don't think the Heedle on the wing experiment will continue. I don't really think that there's a spot for it to continue because, again, you've got your top 9 wings now. So, playing Heedle out of position, barring an injury, I don't think is likely. So I think this ends up being your third line. And then on the fourth line, again, I think Sammy Blais got a spot there. I think Ryan Reeves has a spot there. And I'm putting Morgan Barron there. I think Morgan Barron earns a spot out of camp. That's my thought. Might he not and then get there? Maybe. It's possible. Not ruling it out. But if it were me, I'm of the belief that we're going to see him earn that spot. And again, the loyalty to Kevin Rooney, I think is a fallacy, that just because they protect him in the expansion draft that he's owed something. I don't think that at all. And it was either him or Blackwell, and they said we'll keep the center because we're weaker at center than wing. I have no problem with that. I the people that want to say, it's Rooney's spot because he got that 7th protection slot, I just think that they're apples and oranges. I don't really think that they're even related. Which brings us to the D pairings. There should be no surprises here. And that's why I keep saying, we can romanticize all we want about, Robertson making the team out of camp and Braden Schneider making the team out of camp and, Julian Gauthier finally getting a spot. And we can talk about that until we're blue in the face, but this is what the team is. Lindgren and Fox played super well together for the 2 years they played. Fox just won the Norris Trophy with Ryan Lindgren as his defense partner. You're going to split that up? Probably not. Miller and Trouba played well last year. Has Trouba been an $8 million guy? No. I'm not going to sit here and blow smoke up your ass and say he's earned his contract to this point. I think he maybe could. But that seems like it's an easy pair to put back together. And then again, they signed Patrick Nemeth in the offseason. Nils Lundqvist gets that spot. So again, we can talk all we want to about, they're going to have this guy and that guy and a third. And the reality of it is this is a numbers game. There are only so many spots on your roster. So whatever you want to say is fine. The people that wouldn't, look, I'm going to get to Eichel, and I promise, but the people that wouldn't trade a Braden Schneider or a Roberts, specifically Braden Schneider, who I think is going to be very good. I'm not saying he's not. They wouldn't move him in a deal for Eichel. Don't realize there's not spots here. If Braden Schneider is a long-term defenseman here, I don't think K'Andre Miller is. I got to change one thing on that banner. I realize that I have Fox on the wrong side, and that bothers me probably more than it bothers you. So I'll make that edit real quick. That's where people lose me, frankly, is that they talk about guys that may one day have a spot we don't know that they wouldn't give up for elite talent. Kevin, hockey players are hockey players. They can and are more flexible, get the best out of their team. Kevin said he's earned a C, though. I think he might be talking about Kevin, are we talking about Mika? Who are we talking about? Or Trouba? Let me know what you mean there. Parker, I'll probably lose service at work. Have to check in for duty at work. Hey, brother, thanks for watching the show. It'll be there for on-demand replay, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. You can feel free to watch whenever you want to. I appreciate that more than you know. Bob Cornell, assistant coach Ben Sire, says Morgan has a desire to make the team, size and skill that's so special. 6th round diamond in the rough, Bob. And, we could talk about all this wonderful first-round picks that they've made, and they have. But a guy like that, to be able to find him in the 6th round, awesome. And that's where the value comes in. It isn't so much paying a guy like Barclay Goodrow $3.1 whatever million a year. It's having a guy like Barron who plays a role like that you go get on your own. Lou, is Kreider worthy of the first-line left wing? Too much invisible to be there, but in my opinion, the problem is who do you replace him with, and that's the other issue. Yeah. But I think, though, Lou, that Kreider played well. He played his best hockey with Zibanejad. If there's anybody who can get the most out of Kreider, I think it's Mika. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because Lafreniere is willing to go to the right, it seems. And Strome and Panarin are like a package deal right now. So it's kind of like process of elimination. Well, what can we do with Kreider? How do you solve a problem like Chris Kreider? Well, you put him on the first line left wing with Mika Zibanejad, who he's played well with, Laffy to the right. And they make it work. Kevin, to be honest, if it's the deal breaker, I send Lundqvist to Buffalo for Eichel. They have decent right-handed depth. If Schneider can play right, because if Lundqvist goes, who's your third righty? I agree, though. I mean, they have the depth there. Robert, Tenorti, Robertson, Schneider, Jones, Heike. Am I missing someone? I mean, they all can't play here. And that's what blows my mind. Like, all offseason, we can't trade this guy. He's important. Cool. Jacob Trouba signed for 5 years. Adam Fox was going to be here for the next 15. You're running out of spots. Don't so many spots. So, again, you have to move someone out to create a spot, which is why I said earlier in the show, if there's anybody who might not be long for this team, it might just be Keandre Miller or heresy Ryan Lindgren. We don't know. Now, he signed for 3 years, right? So we'll see. Again, if Schneider and Jones and Robertson for that matter, have roles here, you got to open up spots. You're not trading Fox and you can't trade Trouba. You got to open up spots. Kevin, Trouba earned the C. Not disagreeing with you. Wouldn't say he'd be the leader in the clubhouse for me right now. Parker, just doing my tours. Thank you. I'm assuming that means you're in some kind of law enforcement. I respect you, sir. More than you know. I wasn't built that. I have an immense amount of respect for law enforcement and military because I'm not built that way. And I have a ton of respect for those who are. So if I am right, thank you for your service. Kevin, got to hop. Appreciate it, brother. That's your D pairs. So then that gets us to the extras. So now the extras are easy, at least in my opinion. So one, Rooney becomes your extra one of your extra forwards, can come in. He can play center. He can play wing, very flexible. So easy to have him as a guy, very inexpensive. Jared Tenorti, easy 7th defenseman. Very easy. Can come into the lineup if you need him for a heavier game. It's fine. That leaves your third extra as Julian Gauthier or Dryden Hunt. I lean more towards Hunt. Don't really care. They'll probably swap in and out over the course of the year, right? So it's fine. Lou, for a young promising center, that's your golden nugget. Mm-hmm. Michael, I'd give up Miller before Lindgren. It depends. It depends, but I agree with Chris Reistetter's point, and the parallels are nuts, actually, especially on this team. Lindgren is basically Adam Fox's Jeff Bukaboom, and it's kind of weird to see history repeat itself. But I can't disagree with your point. Brett Anderson, we finally have all these great assets and the team quite literally doesn't have room for, and people don't want them to take a chance on trading some of said assets for the league's premier centers. Just a wild thought process to me. Brett, yeah, I mean, we have these fights on the internet, and look, we all love the team. We all want to see what's best for the team. We just have different opinions on how to get there, and we're talking Jack Eichel at the end of the show. You have my word, because there's some shit going on in Buffalo. Horribly run organization. Anyway, so again, we're 2 weeks, a little more than that, 2.5 weeks out from when the season actually starts. So this is in flux. It's very much a liquid, the roster, but it's not that liquid. Much of it is very solid. We'll see if anybody could earn a spot. Like Cooley, for example, is either here or he's in Windsor. He can't go to Hartford. Weird rules about how many games you play here and there. So whatever. But that's where the roster is right now. Chris, thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Thank you for giving me a like on the show. Luger Zegras for a young stud decent. I don't think Anaheim's trading him for anybody. I mean, that kid looks good though. That kid looks real good. Rookie camp. The Baby Rangers split a 2-game set with the Baby Flyers. A couple of standouts from those games. Obviously, I mentioned Morgan Barron was very noticeable. Will Cooley, very noticeable in those games. Zach Jones, you would expect to be noticeable given that he's had some pro-level experience, and he was, and obviously Nils Lundqvist. But the part for me that just drove me nuts is you have $1 billion organization, and I sit down on Saturday afternoon to watch this on YouTube on my TV, and I realize that it's some idiot with an iPhone just moving around and trying to catch this game, and you couldn't see anything. And I'm thinking to myself, this team's worth $1 billion, more than $1 billion, and they want to put and they're promoting this. They're promoting it on Facebook and Twitter. Oh, watch the prospects game. It's great. And that's how they do it. And then they get showed up by the Flyers, who actually the next day have a legitimate, camera crew with an announcer. I hate the Flyers. I live down here. Just bizarre. You couldn't even watch it. And then when there was like intermission, the guy would just put his iPhone to stare at the scoreboard. What the hell was that for 15 minutes? Auspicious start to the year. Say the least. Peter Manasseh, I couldn't watch it. I tried. Look, ask my wife's not here. Just take my word for it. I'm like, can you come home, to watch my son? I want to watch this game. I want to see the kids play. I love preseason hockey because you get to see the kids play. I went to Wawa. I got myself something to eat, and I sit down, and it's a kid with an iPhone broadcasting. That's what I do. Terrible. Reminded me of a 3-year-old trying to FaceTime. Yeah. +1, Kev. No, +1 for that one. Alex, hate to give the Philly credit of anything. The Flyer broadcast was a million times better. It's funny. The Flyers practice facility is about 25 minutes from my house. One of my offices that I used to work at many moons ago is like right there. But obviously they weren't letting anybody in. They would have loved to see me, all my Ranger paraphernalia, show up in the Flyers skates. Tom Scavetta review and preview. My boys over there, make sure you like their page. Good Ranger fans, good people. We have the red carpet on BlueTruth for guys like Tom Scavetta. Biggest concern heading into the season? I don't know that I have one yet. Maybe my concern is that I'm not concerned. Should I be concerned? Stay tuned. Robert, seriously, they should be airing Hartford games too, since we're talking about all these bubble players. Well, you know what, Robert? It's not like they have their own TV network or a family of networks that they show no programming on all the time, and old stuff from 1994, and if only they just had like the ability to broadcast, right? Stupid. Are we talking Zib? Have I missed it? Peter, we actually opened the show talking about the Zibanejad prospective contract as speculated by Vince Mercogliano of USA Today. Looked to be 7 to 8 years, $8 to $9 million, maybe a touch over 9. That concerns the blue hell out of me. It does. It does. But good news for you. You can watch the show whenever you want to. That's what we open the show with. Tom, I like that answer. Trials and tribulations of being a Ranger fan. Parker Beard, Jack Eichel won't be a Ranger. Couldn't stand listening to the media of Cat goes Zibanejad and top picks for him. Yeah, but that's not going to happen. Parker, I promise you. You got my word, brother. We're getting to it. Pieces 8x8 do it. Peter, that does mean you're paying a 34, 35, and 36-year-old Mika Zibanejad $8 million. Concerns. But anyway. So, again, rookie camp, split the series. From what I could tell from a shaky iPhone, the kids looked okay. I was looking a lot more at what the Twitter responses were from the media that was there. Molly Walker did a real nice job, keeping everything as good as she could there. But, again, you couldn't see jack shit. Blame the Rangers for that. Remembering Rod Gilbert, the Rangers will wear a number 7 patch all year this year to honor the Hall of Famer who recently, unfortunately, passed away. The introduction of the Rod Gilbert Award, which has Chris Kreider written all over it. The player best exemplifies Rod's attitude, not just towards the team, but his community and helping out. And this is just something that I think off the bat that Chris Kreider's got to be the leader in the clubhouse for, as you can see Rod throughout his career here. They should probably just kind of like keep that for Chris Kreider. Like, I just think that's the direction they're going to go. They're also opening night game, the home opener against the Dallas Stars. They'll be wearing the whites in warmups, which is what they did when Rod was there. And, it's actually an interesting talking point. When I grew up, they wore the whites at home. When the Rangers won the Cup in '94, they wore the whites at home. The one Ranger game that I went to in my adult life, on my birthday, the Rangers wore the whites home against the Flyers. That was Ryan Callahan's 4-goal game. So maybe they should wear the whites at home. What do I know? Peter says, got to do it. There's always a choice. There's always door number 2. I agree with you that they're going to, right? We can discuss, like, do they have to and do they not have to? That's a discussion you and I'm happy to have that discussion, but they're going to. Like, this we know. So we can argue till I'm blue in the face. It's not going to matter. They're going to do it. Years 1 to 5, okay for Zib. Later will be a disaster. Settle for 6, 7, 8, hard no. Kev, I hear you, but if you're him, why would you take 6? Why? He has them over a barrel. Who, if he's not signed, they're not bringing back Ryan Strome. Are you going to play Philip Hedl as your number 1 center next year in 2021, 22? No, of course not. So, he's worth $10 million for 5, maybe. I'd much rather have paid him $10 million the last 2 years than the 2 years on the back end of this deal. I mentioned this a bunch of times. Of note, you have to bring it up. Jack Eichel in Buffalo. The situation continues to deteriorate between the Sabres and Eichel. He failed his physical because, of course, he failed his physical because he didn't get neck surgery. I sit there in Ranger groups like, oh man, can't believe it's. I am so happy we didn't trade for Eichel. Did you hear he failed his physical? He needs neck surgery. Of course he failed his physical. Did you think he was going to pass his physical with a broken freaking neck? People. However, I mentioned earlier in the show that the Rangers are maintaining about $9.3 million in cap space. And you're like, what could they be doing with the cap space? They're keeping their options open because at some point this is going to deteriorate to the point where they're going to sell Eichel to the highest bidder. And guess what? There ain't that many teams with $9 million in cap space that can take him on. And something tells me this is going to happen like November, December. He won't play this year. He'll IR the whole year, but the Rangers can absorb him. And they might get him for a song. I usually have my Grinch gif that I like to use, but if they get him for nothing, man, that's what I'm talking about. Look, I'd be willing to give him a decent deal, but right now, the Rangers are looking more and more like the only legitimate suitor that has the cap space to take him on. Doesn't care if they pay him $10 million to sit on his ass because we're the Rangers and we print money. So you would pay hockey tickets. It's looking pretty promising. Eichel, yup. Parker, not necessarily. Not necessarily. They dumped Butch for nothing but cap relief. They made room for a reason. They did. But again, if he was here now, where would he play? They opened up that spot because they knew they were bringing in a winger. And that winger is Barclay Goodrow. It didn't have to be the equivalent winger to Pavel Buchnevich because, again, you're moving pieces around. Laffy from left to right, Kreider from 3 to 1. Now, all of a sudden, where are you going to put Buchnevich? The third line? You just got done doing that. I understand it. Like in a weird, like, windy road, it makes semi-sense. Does that mean I'm happy with the trade return? Absolutely not. No. It is what it is now. We can't dwell. Like, it's done. So wish him luck. He's out in St. Louis in the Western Conference. Great. Peter says no Eichel unless they eat half salary. I don't care how cheap we get him for. Well, I'd be willing to give them more if they did that. Like I'd be because I agree with you. You and I are on the same page here that salary cap space is so goddamn important that if you're able to get him for half contract or somewhere near that, yes, it behooves you to do it. And I would pay more to get that done. I would give them more assets for you to say, listen, keep the $5 million. You people are not using your cap space anyway. We'll give you more. You're going to be in hell for the next 5 years regardless. Help yourself out. We'll see. And Robert, with reading my mind, his stock isn't going up, but they're also ridiculous. Strip him of the captaincy. Why? Because you wouldn't let him get surgery? It's bad. like, we can joke around half-heartedly about Glenn Sather and the mismanagement of the team in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I mean, yeah, it sucked, but this is like a new level. This is elite level mismanagement. I'm like, my God, how bad can you be at this? So again, it is not an accident, guys. It is not an accident that there's $9.3 million in cap space. It's not an accident that that might just be enough to go get Jack Eichel. And then put him on LTIR and keep the space open anyway, which means you can go in the deadline and accumulate expiring deals. No, Kevin, I'll tell you right now, zero shot. I wouldn't do that, but there's a zero shot. At this point, you are much more likely to see non-roster players go. That's a like a Braden Schneider, Will Cooley, 2 first-round pick. Like that's a youth deal now. I don't think the Rangers even touch their roster. Bob, you call him stubborn. I call him stupid. It's an idiot. He's an idiot. This could not have been worse. Hell, this could not have been any way handled more poorly. Good job. Kind of only Kevin Adams Buffalo could have blown a situation like this. Oh God, it is so brutal. It is so brutal. So we'll be back next week. Obviously, they'll have played a couple of preseason games. So they'll be actually, are they even, now that I mentioned that, because this may end up being a watch along next week, depending on if they're playing. So let me just take a quick gander. I probably should have done that before I said we're doing a show next week. Rangers preseason schedule. Okay, so no. So there's no game on Thursday night. They play the Islanders on Sunday, the Bruins on Tuesday, both at the Garden. They play the Devils Friday night at the Rock. So great. So next Thursday night, we will reconvene and we'll talk about what we saw in the first 2 preseason games. Again, are there battles? I mean, we can talk about are there battles. I don't think there's no battles. It's half a one. We know who this team is. So it's nice. Get the kids some playing time. Showcase them if you want to. If you're trying to make a deal. But I don't think that we are who we are. As you know, BlueTruth powered by the Sports Box podcast network that I'm heading. We'll be doing the Sports Box NHL season preview the following Thursday on October the 7th. We'll have some fans from different teams on. Obviously, I'll be repping our boys, as I always do. So there'll be a lot to talk about then. Hopefully, you'll join us for that and overwhelm the chat with pro Rangers propaganda and drown all the Flyers fans who are dumb anyway. Thank you everyone for your likes, for your shares. Again, as I say, we always like to try to break the Facebook algorithm. The more likes and shares that we get and comments, the more the Mark Zuckerberg will let it be seen out there. So thank you very much, those who gave us likes there. Just finishing up the comments here. Mike Epstein, non-roster players for sure. Yep. Parker, why do you trade our top draft picks? That's stupid. Thank you, bro. It's not even why. Why the hell should we? If Buffalo has destroyed his value, why the hell are we going to overpay? I said this a couple of weeks ago. Drury wants this like big swinging dick New York Ranger move, and that's Jack Eichel. But it's Jack Eichel on his terms. So I tell you right now, like I'm not worried that they will overpay for Eichel. Because I think what would be an overpayment now is probably what we would have paid before. You want Ryan Strome? Take Ryan Strome. I don't care. It's fine. Alex Haseda's with management was always rooted in trying to win, but going about it incorrectly. The motivation was correct. Buffalo situation seems rooted in ego and spite. I can see it. Yeah, I can see it. I think there's some truth to that. The guy's just an idiot. I mean, I there's no way around that. I'm not even trying to be nice. I mean, he is a moron. Robert, take pictures, bud. I cannot wait to go back. I cannot wait to go back. I sit with a friend of mine, Scott Spector, in section 115, row 22. Any of you guys see my smiling face there? Come up, high fives and hugs. I mean, I can't wait to get back to that building. This is not a political statement, and please don't take it as, and I know people have their own thoughts about the vaccine. I'm not going to change your mind. I'd have injected antifreeze to go back to the Garden. I don't care. I don't care. So whatever. I don't care. Whatever you want to give me, I'm going. I don't care. So neither here nor there. We don't do politics on this show. Do you? I'm not going to tell you what to do and do. For me, there wasn't a decision. I mean, I knew early on this was going to be the way it was going to go, so I did what I had to do. Mike Bruce will be at the game Tuesday. Can't wait. Bob, great night. No, thank you. Thank you for interacting. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. It's a lot of fun for me too. What are you thinking? Jack's coming here? Give me 60-40 yes. I don't know when or for how much, but give me 60-40 yes on that. Kevin said, I was saying that's what it would take for Buffalo to retain half. Kev, I don't think it will. Don't get me wrong. It will cost the Rangers more. But it's not going to cost Kakko or Lafreniere. I don't think so. I don't think they do that. I don't think that's even a remote possibility. I honestly don't. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. I'm wrong all the time, right? But I don't see it. I honestly don't see it. So again, thank you everyone so much for your interaction, for your likes. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, follow us on Facebook. Check out the at BlueTruth SB on Twitter. If you're watching the YouTube replay, awesome. Subscribe to the channel. But also, we're here live whenever we do the show, usually Thursday nights. We'll try to get into some sort of rhythm as the season goes in, obviously on weeks that there's no Ranger games, unless we do a watch along, which there's a bit of a delay on this, and it's not really the best experience. But thank you all for your interaction. I had a lot more fun than you did, so thank you for that. And we will see you next week. Let's catch some hockey this weekend. Let's go Rangers.